In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to compile and run your 3.12 projects in Linux. Visual Studio is a pretty lenient compiler and GCC is much more strict. I've seen a lot of students having issues with the grader, and most of them have been related to the differences in GCC and Visual Studio and Windows and Linux. So hopefully this tutorial will help eliminate some, if not all, of those issues. We'll start off by downloading a program called VirtualBox. VirtualBox is software that allows you to emulate an operating system right inside of Windows. The way it works is you set up what's called a virtual machine. The virtual machine has access to some of your computer's hardware and uses it to run the operating system. There's also a virtual hard drive that's basically just a huge file in Windows, but it acts like a like a proper hard drive in your virtual machine. So we'll start off by going to the VirtualBox website and clicking this x86 AMD 64 link. And this will go ahead and start the download. So while this is downloading, we can go ahead and start downloading Linux as well. There's a variety of distributions of Linux, and for this class we'll be using one called Linux Mint. Linux Mint has a pretty similar interface to Windows, so it shouldn't be too difficult to transition. So you can click this download button. We'll be using the 32-bit Cinnamon version. And when you click that, you'll see a bunch of places where you can download the file from. I've found that using this advanced hosters one from North America, USA is pretty quick, so I'll go ahead and use that. Alright, I've jumped ahead a little bit and went and finished my download. So first what we need to do is install VirtualBox to our computer. We'll start by double-clicking the installer. And you can actually use the default settings for basically everything. If you want to customize the installation, then feel free to look at the options. One thing that's important though is at some point you'll lose internet, so make sure that you finish downloading your Linux file before you install VirtualBox. Okay, once the installation is finished, if you press finish, you'll go ahead and launch VirtualBox. So I have an old virtual machine sitting here. Go ahead and just remove that. What we want to do is actually set up our virtual machine. We can do that by clicking this new button. We'll just call this E312, and we have to set the type to Linux. We'll be using Ubuntu as a version. Technically, Linux Mint is different, but it's derived from Ubuntu, so this will be pretty good. Make sure you do pick the 32-bit version though. So if you press next, it'll ask you how much memory you want to allocate. 768 megabytes is plenty. If you want to give more, then feel free to. And now we actually want to create that virtual hard drive file I was mentioning earlier. So to do that, you can also use basically the default settings for everything. Initially, it'll create an 8 gigabyte file, but if the virtual machine needs more space, this file will automatically expand. Okay, so now this entry will show up. If we double click this, then it'll open up a window which allows us to select that version of Linux we downloaded. You can press this button and then go to that file you downloaded, press open, and when you press start, it'll start booting up Linux Mint. Okay, so once Linux is booted, we'll actually begin setting it up. I know I mentioned the interface is similar to Windows, so you can see there's like a start menu here and a couple of links. We'll actually be using the terminal for most of our things. So if you go ahead and open that up, one thing about how Linux works, essentially there's something analogous to an app store, which provides a huge library of software. So what we need to do first is use this tool called apt-get. and update our local copy of the library. And that'll take a moment. And then once that's complete, we can actually download GCC and SVN. So you can use that apt-get tool again, and you type in sudo apt-get install build essential. That'll get all the compiler related stuff, and then subversion will download the SVN. It'll ask you to confirm. Just go ahead and press yes, and this will take about a minute or so to download. Alright, now that we've installed the programs we need, we can download our SVN repository. Make sure before you do this step that you've committed all your files from Tortoise SVN in Windows. So to download the entire repository, you can type in svn checkout username and then your EID. In this case, I'll be using a fictional student called Solstud. And then the URL, which is https://lenin.ec.utexas.edu/ee312/fa2015/Suleiman. It may ask you to save a certificate or something. If so, you can press P and it'll just permanently save that. It'll just basically stop bothering you. Then it'll ask you to type in your SVN password. So once you type that in, it'll pop up this window. You can actually type in any password for this. So I'll just go ahead and use one. And once you do that, it should start downloading your files. Okay, so I'm going to digress a little bit and just talk about how to use the terminal. When you're in the terminal, you have this concept of a current directory. If you type in the command ls, you can see the files in the current directory that you're in. In this case, I'm in my home directory, and some of the files are just set up by Linux Mint. But you'll see that there's a Suleiman directory, and that's where the project, that's where our SVN repository was downloaded. So to move into this directory, you can type in cd and then the directory name. And if we type in ls, we can see some of the files we downloaded. We want to end up inside the project1 directory, so we can go to students, see what's in here. Once again, going to this fictional character, Solstud, enter ls, and we finally see project1. So cd into that, ls, and we can see our files right here. So once we've gotten in here, we can actually compile and run our project. One of the files in here is the make file. The make file is just a file that tells the compiler the exact steps it needs to take to build the project. We can actually run this make file by typing in a command called make. If you type in make, you can see G++ is the name of the compiler. Hopefully, when you do this step on your projects, you don't see any errors. If so, you'll have to go in your code and check to see what's going on. But in this case, we didn't have any errors. So if we do another ls, we'll see this this green project1, which is created. This is actually the executable for our project. So to run an executable, you'd type in / and then the name of the executable. And so if we do that, we can see the output. This fictional student didn't really have time to do the lab, and so what you see right now is just the base code, the output from the base code. So that's the process you'll be using for building and running all the projects. Obviously for project 2, you'd go into the project 2 directory instead of project 1. Just a couple of things before I close off. First of all, you've done a checkout on your SVN, but most likely when you're updating your files in Windows, you'll have to run an update inside Linux as well. So you need to do that from the Suleiman directory. We can use cd actually to go up to a parent directory. So if we type in cd ... it takes us to Solstud. We can see the files in there. And if we repeat that a couple of times, we end up in Suleiman, and we see the 3 folders. So once you're in here, you can type in svn update, and it'll go ahead and update the files. In this case, I haven't committed anything since I checked out in Linux, and so it didn't list any new files. One last thing, if you go to the file explorer down here, you can go to your Suleiman directory and navigate through here. And this is just a quick way, which is similar to Windows, where if you double click a file, then you can go ahead and see its contents and edit them. So if you ever have to make a quick compiler fix, you can do it straight from Linux.